Hi, everybody. I'm having some issues with my microphone, so this is the last time I'm trying it. And I'm just going to make the video, and maybe you'll have to turn up your volume all the way. Um, this is Frequency Bones from a Music Connection 15, video 4. And this summer's topic, spontaneity within a plan. One of the things I've been thinking about is the word spontaneity really is synonymous with life. Spontaneous. So there's an aspect of life that is always going along. It's always going along, but it's always changing and moving to what's needed because nothing in this relative creation stands still. All right, it just doesn't. And life is intelligent. It's intelligent. Therefore, it has an aspect of, even if it's what we would consider unconscious or automatic spontaneity, to adjust to a circumstance. It's intelligent. It's intelligent. So we can't always compare, the way a human being goes on to a plant, because a plant might be a lot more sensitive. All right, it really might be, because its psychology is not getting in the way. This little hair just won't stay there. It spontaneously just wants to do what it wants to do. Well, who knows? There's a reason for it. If I'm moving around, it's going to want to move around for some reason. So I'm not sure that's spontaneity, but it's definitely just going to do its thing because I didn't wrap it tight enough around my head to feel like I'm being pulled back and yanked by my ponytail. So hopefully some of this will come up, because one of the things we're going to do today is look into rhythm, pitch, and timbre. And I generally would call that the tripod, the infrastructure of what's needed for music to actually appear here. But you know what? I thought about it, and all of a sudden, the music, the hills are alive with the sound of music. And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. Sound, just in case you can't hear me, sound appears through rhythm, pitch, and timbre. Those just aren't musical terms. We use them, but they're actually essences within themselves that combine to form what we call sound. And of course, if you have a unified sound, all right, in that one sound, there is rhythm, pitch, and timbre. And there's very easy ways to discover that. All right? And actually, on the Zoom session we'll be having tomorrow, probably by the time you get this video, tomorrow we'll have maybe left. But we'll be getting into the fact that one note itself has those three basic components. Because think about it. If you take a sound and we put it on some recording device and we keep slowing down the speed and slowing down the speed, what happens to that one note? Eventually it sounds like you can hear the individual pulsings of the vibrations that make that note. The pitch gets much, much lower, right? Because lower in this case does mean slower, and slower in this case does mean lower. And so, yeah, you could get it down to that level. So all of a sudden there's more space when something's slower in between the vibrations. So rhythm in this case is time. And then when we speed it up, right? Speed up the tempo, time, all of a sudden the pitch starts to go higher, which is amazing in itself, just because. For me, everything has a certain awe to it. So I don't go to a kind of a dry academic mindset and goes, well, of course it does. It got faster, therefore it's going to go higher. You start to lose awe, and that's a problem if you do. Because awe is one of the most magnificent things that a human being can vibrate to. It creates a gratitude, a humility, an enthusiasm, and an inspiration about life. And music is a living thing, because that's what I come out of. Music is a living thing. So I think, well, what is the life of rhythm? What is the life of pitch? What is the life of timbre? Okay, so rhythm, or in this case, you can just take a tempo, and if you speed it really up, if you speed it up, the pitch is going to go higher. So the rhythm created pitch. But there had to be a pitch in order to be able to tell that a note was really that low. You had to be able to hear it as a sound, even if it sounds kind of like a thump. So it's fascinating. It's almost like fractal mathematics. Those little thumps on the micro cosmic impulses of sound. So you wonder, the sound of Om that the Vedas talk about. Was that the first expression? The great yogi Paramahansa Yogananda talks about it in great detail. That Om sound is one of the first expressions of creation. So sound is pretty sacred, even though there's different levels of sound. You know, in the realm that we live in, there can be some really pretty coarse sounds. Coarse doesn't always mean terrible or unhealthy, but coarser, just like everything else, there's a spectrum from coarse to fine. Okay? And things will change. The sound of a cow having this giant moo, or a bull going moo, you know, it almost sounds like the greatest Mahler third I ever heard, when there used to be a bull living next door. It was amazing, the resonance and the substance of that sound. Okay? Next to the chickadee. It's so sweet. It's so, so sweet. And then when it's ticked, because it's not getting its seeds, so all these different pitches are actually rhythm, slowed up, or let's see, slowed up, slowed down, or sped up, right? At the same time, They have an identification, not only with pitch, which is an indicator of intensity, if you think about it, but also of timbre. So rhythm, pitch, and timbre is the tripod of how music can express itself, because you've never been to a concert without hearing rhythm, pitch, and timbre. In fact, you as a human being are a note, in the symphony of life, or the symphony of creation. You're a note. You have your own frequency, your own rhythm, pitch, and timbre. But what's fascinating when I started to think about timbre is, in order for rhythm and pitch, when they come together, because we know they're very related right now, don't we? They need something to resonate through to have a timbre appear. Now that gets very curious when you think of the beginning of creation. Even in the Bible, the Old Testament says, in the beginning, there was the Word. That's pretty incredible. Word means sound. But you wonder, what was it resonating in to create that timbre, that place where the rhythm pitch, the RP, could actually resonate. But when it resonates in a particular shape, all right, that's the sonic signature of that particular shape. So if you're even looking at it that way, and that each person is totally unique, just looking, well, all of life is totally unique in its own way, okay? There's not a duplicate of a leaf or a snowflake or a grain of sand, let alone a human being. But what's fascinating about that is, how can you teach everyone exactly the same? Now, certain principles might be the same, but you have to know how to find what that person needs by what they resonate to. At least I do. Sure, you can give someone some exercises, and if they do them a certain way, they'll get a result. Some people, you give them a set formula to play it, and they're not going to have the kind of result you were hoping for. Now you can say, well, maybe they're not repeating it enough. Or maybe the way that they're doing it is getting in the way of their progress of developing, let's say, a more stable tone and more even pitch, which of course, depending on the embouchure and the duet between the embouchure and the air, and then add the trio to the tongue, right? Tongue, embouchure, air support system, all that. Of course, how can you say the tongue without saying how the teeth doing? But you can look at things in threes. There's that interesting number again. Or you can look at it in fours and fives and all sorts of different ways. Now, does someone have to know what I'm talking about in order to play the trombone? Of course not. I wasn't thinking that when I was 12, when I was playing Morceau Symphonique. But that doesn't mean that that nature's laws weren't going on in their process. But knowing about them is extraordinary. You know why? Because nature's laws are not human-made. They're not human-made. Humans can manipulate it, okay? And not always with nature's plan in mind, but their own. That's a whole other can, isn't it? So, I guess what I want to transmit in this, or I feel what's important about this is the sacredness of life. And that spontaneity is part of the plan. And a human being isn't as fixed as a lot of other things, like a tree. Okay? They're very set in their functions. Bees, very set in their functions, even within one hive, right? The different kinds of bees. You don't have the drone going, doggone it, I wish I was the queen. You don't have that. You have it in humans. So the human is an interesting note in the symphony of creation. And that's basically what I have to say today, because it could go on and on and on and on. And that's part of the gift, is that it can always grow and continue, because that's what life was meant to do. Even though, like all notes, there's another 3 for you. There's a beginning, middle, and an end. But that's at the physical level.